Biggest conflict in my marriage and amongst the couples I coach is due to the lack of the ability to negotiate. When couples learn how to negotiate, they can literally have any conversation about anything and partner together in creating a life worth having. Join me for this episode as I lay out what negotiation is and how you can do it. Let's start by looking at what negotiation is not. It is not compromise, it's not going along, it's not agreeing to disagree, or not meeting in the middle. Negotiation is creating a new way that is better than either party's original idea or viewpoint. Here are the 5 steps to negotiation. 1, you must get neutral. Now that is really challenging. Because when we have an idea or something that we want, we automatically think that our idea is the best idea or the right way to do it. So if I'm going to negotiate with my spouse, the first thing I must do is get off my judgments, get off my need to be right. As each spouse is willing to get neutral, they're ready for step number 2. Step number 2 is to present the problem without it being a problem. Think about that. We think that when we have differing ideas or what I want is different than what my spouse wants, now all of a sudden we have a problem. If I decide I want to potty train in this way and my spouse wants to potty train in that way, it feels like a problem. If I want to buy a certain kind of vehicle and he wants to buy a different kind of vehicle, we act like it's a problem. It's not a problem. We just have 2 differing ideas, and the reality is 2 are better than 1. Always. There's really never an exception to that rule. When you are working to create a solution to something that you want to be life-giving, right? There's probably more ideas than what either of you have come up with individually, and that's the beauty of a partnership. It's what brings you to want to be married. So now we're ready for step number 3. And step number 3 is lay out possible solutions. We could do it, you have an idea of how it could be done. I have an idea of how it could be done. What are 5 other ways that it could be done? How could we brainstorm together and actually look at, there's thousands of ways any specific thing can be done. There's thousands of options for how any one thing can be done. But what blocks us from the creativity, what blocks us from the brainstorming and coming up with even better options than either of us have come up with, is our need to be right. So throughout negotiation, there is no need to be right. There's a willingness to keep looking at possibilities, keep looking at what is our way. It's not your way or my way. What is our way? What's a new blended idea that brings about both of our creativity into one place? Step 4 is decide on a solution that you both agree with. Now remember, it's like one of the things that creates a problem is we think there's a right way to do something, right? Like there is a right house that we must buy, or there is a right way to discipline the children. Now, in my years of life, what I've learned is there is absolutely no right way, because we are humans and we are becoming, and we may have purchase the perfect car, but that car winds up being a lemon. Or we may have purchased the perfect house and then things change in the community and that house is no longer what we want. Or we may think that there is a right way that we must make decisions together, but then as we grow and we change and we develop, we realize, well, that's not the right way that works for us anymore. So the truth is, we are deciding on a possibility that we can both agree on. This, I think, in this moment, with the information we have and what we know, this, we believe, could work for both of us. That takes you to step number 5, where you implement and begin to walk out the possibility that you came up with. Because reality is, when we're not focused on a right way to do something and we're looking at possibilities, we're willing to sit in the truth of how life actually works, that we're trying something on. We're not making a decision like, okay, absolutely, this is the way we're going to move forward, and that's 100% going to work. We're going to decide this is a really good idea. This is what we both believe in and can agree to. Let's start taking steps forward. And then as it begins to play out, we realize, oh, we thought we were going this direction. We need to turn a little and go this direction. And oh, something happens there. We need to turn and go back another direction. In our human love of being right, this is uncomfortable. We like to believe that we have made the right decision, or that my way is the right way. And all that does is create tension and chaos and bitterness and resentment. So negotiation, a big part of negotiation is realizing life doesn't work the way we like to make up that it works. Life works in partnership as we try things on and we walk towards it and see what happens. An example of negotiation for Jeff and I is when we were deciding to try and figure out where we wanted to live. We had been born and raised in Illinois until we were in our 50s or 40s, and then we moved to California. And when we moved to California, we thought we were going to be there forever. What we found out is our adult children weren't excited to come to California with us, so that was no longer going to work. And our children were spread across the country, so there was no real reason for us to stay so far away from most of our children. And the ones who were still there were deciding where they were going to wind up, and California may not be where they wound up. So my husband and I had the opportunity, the freedom to discover where we wanted to live. Now, it's scary because that makes a big difference in our future. But we began to negotiate this, and we took step number one, which was to get off of what we thought was true. It was easy for me. I was like, well, let's just go where the grandkids are. But we realized neither one of us were overly excited about being in the state that they live in. We love them, want to be close to them. And we also realized our other children are going to be having children. And then what happens with that? So, and then my husband was sure that he wanted to live in the West. And yet we weren't sure how, the weather was going to work as we aged and being that far away from children and all this kind of thing. So we quickly got neutral. We quickly realized there was not a right place to live, and that we were going to need to hold this conversation in an open hand and begin to explore and live in the uncertainty and the discovery of exploration. In step number 2, we realized that we both wanted to live somewhere that excited us. The solution was, how do we find a place where we can both be bought in and excited to live there? So we entered into step number 3. We began to brainstorm about what would be a good way of exploring options. All we knew was, let's live here or let's live there. But that wasn't really creating much exploration or the discovery of possibilities. So we came up with a format where we laid out what would be most important to us in an area that we wanted to live. Like climate is really important to both of us. Geography, having mountains and exciting things where there's adventure out our doors, that's important to us. Being close to family, having access to things that we enjoy, like coffee and good food. And so we laid out a bit of a evaluation system. And then we both began to explore different towns that had all of these components. They had a good climate, they had good geography, close to family, had adventure, and the food and coffee was close by. So we began to each bring every option we could come up with to the meeting as we met together. We met a lot of times. And we began to lay it out. And together we began to rate on a scale of 1 to 10. What is the climate in this area? What is the geography on a scale of 1 to 10? What is the closeness to family on a scale of 1 to 10? And we wound up having about 10 different options on the board. And then we took those 10 different options and we narrowed it to the top 5 that rated the most high in each category. And then we continued to wrestle from there. And we wound up getting down to, we were at a point in our journey where we really needed to make a decision or not a decision, but really get clear about a possibility. And so we wound up deciding Tennessee was where we would start trying it on. And we came up with, how can we try this on? Because we don't want to start out, if we buy our forever home, then that's not going to work because that's going to make us feel more permanent. And so we decided that one of the great ways we could try it on was to invest in a rental property or an Airbnb property that would allow us to live in the property and, create cash flow, which is one of our dreams and our desires. And that way it wasn't permanent. And so we have tried it on for a year, a little over a year now. And we realize that we need to keep looking at some of the other possibilities because this one isn't reaching both of what we need in what we have committed to create as the solution in this. And so we are now at step number 5, where we are deciding, what is the next thing we want to try on? When do we want to try it on? And so step number 5 is implementing. So obviously purchasing the home was a part of the implementation. And yet when we purchased it, we knew it was a try on. It wasn't like, yep, we found our home, we found where we're living, we're trying it on. Jordan Peterson encourages couples to negotiate everything, even down to where the scissors go. Because what he says is your life isn't made up of the big things. It's made up of the little things, the things that you do every single day, like grab the scissors a couple times a day. If one of you is really stressed out about where the scissors are, that's going to create a lot of disconnection and bitterness and resentment growing in the relationship. If you think about something like dinner, you spend about 1/14 of every single day around dinner. If you look over a lifetime, you're going to spend over 6 years of your entire life working with dinner. So if you can get these things, like how do you negotiate to find a way to where preparing dinner works for both of you? How do you come up with a schedule or, meal plans, meals that both of you enjoy? How do you come up with, how do you spend your time while you're eating dinner? And who cleans up? All of these things are part of dinner, and every single one of them needs to be negotiated, because if you can produce your dinner experience to be life-giving for both of you, and you do it every single day, and you keep working to negotiate what works for each of you, you're going to have a pretty enjoyable life if 1/14 of every single day is enjoyable for you. So what are you and your spouse fighting about? How can you negotiate and bring both of your ideas together and create something even better than either of you can come up with on your own? Whether it's how to run the household, raise responsible children, work through conflict together, keep your romance alive, the list goes on and on of daily things that you do that if you will learn to negotiate, you can create an enjoyable life. Whatever it is that is creating conflict for you in your marriage, it matters. Think about it. You're fighting about it, so it matters. It's worth coming to negotiation and finding something that works for both of you. Will you care enough about the quality of your life and your spouse's life to negotiate a new and creative approach that you both are bought into? Which of the 5 steps to negotiation do you most need to grow in yourself? Would you take a minute and share that in the comments below? I look forward to seeing you next week. in our episode next Wednesday. Hey, hun.
Yeah.
What's something we need to negotiate?
To me, I still believe we need to negotiate what's our next move in real estate.